Hey everybody, welcome back to Markets and Sectors. My name is Mike Fairborn, and it's good to be back with you. Happy Friday. It's that day of the week where we do teach this. By the way, the last class of the day, last class of the week. Looking forward to the weekend and really taking a look at a lot of what's out there. I hope to provide some information on that we can maybe look into for potential stock leaders towards the second half of the year. What some of the institutions are focusing in on, and there's a lot to kind of look at here, but maybe three or four key industries where they are seeing strength to continue to the end of the year. And what's fascinating is we are seeing some of the flags within those sectors, industries, and flag patterns within those groups, and within those stocks within there. So I intend to hit those, but we've got it appears to be a lively group here with us today, and it is good, folks, to see you all. Welcome to you, Jay Richardson. Jenny. Haven't seen Jenny before, but welcome, Jenny. Great to have you here. Kay Brown, Michael, welcome, as well as Simone and several others. Good to have you on board, folks. Any questions, comments you have, throw those in the chat so we can address those for you. We've got our good friend here with us to help out. A good friend of mine, Brent Moores. See him in the chat, highlighted as BM. Those are his initials, Brent Moores. Follow us on X, Brent Moore CS, Mike Fairborn CS. And with that, let's hit some disclosures. So plenty to look at today. All right, looking forward to it, folks. Material here is intended for general information and educational purposes only. Now, the paper money software application is provided for educational purposes only as well. Investing involves risk, including loss of principal, and for some products and strategies, loss of more than your initial investment. Now, I did note here, futures and futures option trading does involve substantial risk. Not suitable for all investors. We don't dive into futures. We have a class for that. We just look at the charts here to give us big picture perspectives as well. So some final disclosures there to keep an eye on. Okay. Well, with all that, let's dive on into it and let's look broadly at our markets real quick first that we like to do. And by the way, this does stick out a little bit today in terms of that candle. Now, we did fight back a little bit. It's not about 185 right now. Just looking at it, we did fight back yesterday with some of the initial losses. You could see we opened lower, but we actually ended up closing higher. That's not what we're seeing today, and that's a fairly large red candle that you can see right here coming down. In fact, it's kind of safe to say that might be one of the largest red candles in the past. Well, certainly in this upward trend. Got to be mindful of that. It's kind of large, not unexpected with this kind of a move. What I want to initially do on that when we see these is to throw on a Fibonacci off the bottom to the top. Let's just see where some of those levels come in at and see if there's anything that kind of anchors in here. I can see a couple of maybe some areas here. There is the 23.6. You can see as we've come down here, just keep a watch on that 7,300. It is a round number. We're right around 74 right now, and we've come down to this point here. 7,100 is the 38.2, and all the way down here is at the 50, and that's some bigger support here, clearly bigger support at basically this level here, right around 7,000. Now that is kind of like the big round number at 7,000, and that's a long ways down. A lot of expectations is there's still a big infrastructure AI build out, but these kinds of scenarios will happen when you do get big runs, and you've got to be mindful of it. One of the things that really kind of tipped the scale, and by the way, you see this over here. Sometimes you will get these big candles, but then you might, believe it or not, you might get a reversal if the rally's not done, and you'll see it going higher. Something very similar right there as well. So sometimes you can get big sort of capitulation occurring here that can occur. But I think what drove a lot of this was probably the announcement from Broadcom yesterday. Actually, yeah, it was yesterday that it came out. We're seeing a continuation of a follow through here. That was very, very close to a 100 point dip on Broadcom, something on the order of maybe 18%. We're down about 20 plus percent now. But you know, they did report there was a sell-off. A lot of times there are sky high expectations when the stock has already moved up sky high. We had a trade on this. We took it off. I'd mentioned in the class we'd take that off probably before earnings. Uh, you know, so it did dip because earnings can be kind of crazy. It didn't quite fulfill its price pattern. Little side note, but yeah, when you have sky high expectations, you really have to just do incredibly well. Now, revenue, folks, did surge with the company. It did surge. You come over here and you take a look at it. They beat earnings really well too, as you can see. Revenue, earnings came in. Uh, a lot of their sales are tied to basically Meta and Google as well, just as a side note. But that kind of had the chips moving a bit lower because it didn't meet those higher expectations. So you could see some of that sell off right now. I think that's going to be a big part of this. What are we down right now? About 10% here on AMD. That's not going to be nearly as much on the SPX, probably less than half. Yeah, quarter of that, basically, about 2.4%. But I think where you're going to see it even bigger is where it is consolidated or condensed technically, and that's going to be in this group right here. So not quite double that, but you're in the 4% range to the downside here. You can see that I did put on some fibs already here, and we are actually, as it relates to technology, which could be fueling, clearly the chips are fueling much of this decline. Look where we're approaching. A big round number there, 29,000. That's the 23.6, and that's where we might start to see. I mean, there's prior support in that range. Let's see what we get there. One of the things I do, and I'm going to zoom kind of fast forward here because I do, a lot of times when you're just getting one big bar coming down, and these are big range bars here. Folks, this just helps me to kind of put things in context. Go ahead and put in the 30 minute chart. You can see I've got my grid chart set up daily up top in the right hand corner. Daily 30, that's a 5 minute. The weekly slipped in there. I don't know how it did that, but it found a way to get itself in there. Got the weekly, but here you go on the 5 minute chart. Excuse me, the 30 minute. It provides a lot more detail, more minute level, does it not? I mean, what are we getting there? Something like 13 more bars that we're seeing here on the 30-minute chart as we come down. That's that big level here. You can see what it's looked like today after the gap. It's been pretty directional to the downside. So we haven't spent a lot of time down here, but what this does is if in case we start to base at some of these levels, it does give you a reference point. I'm getting just slightly better. Had to adjust that, drawing these straight lines in here with that new mouse. But you can see, yeah, I mean, like right here, this level, here, here, here. There's a lot in here too. Sometimes you can see that support resistance a little bit better when you're just getting that more data points into that. Now, I did get a note earlier today. It was actually an alert, which was on the sorry, dollar sign DXY, the dollar index. And the dollar index shot up. Now, when the dollar index shoots higher, what can happen is it can put pressure on assets. S&P 500 is an asset class. Commodities are clearly an asset class too. But I've been looking at this for a little bit, saying it sort of looks like a rounded type bottom. But if we begin, just note this, if we begin to break above these highs, don't be surprised if you start to see additional selling in the market. However, it has been a very good resistance level. By the way, you've got this big key point over here. And I would say that, from an institutional perspective, at least from what they're saying, the AI kind of infrastructure theme is well and in place. And for those of you that have, been to this class frequently, we've talked long term about some of these major innovative productivity cycle outlays, rollouts, the PC computer at home, 4 to 5 year cycle, internet 4 to 5 year cycle, and now AI. We might have a year to 2 years left if we're still looking at those same time frames. So that could still all be in check here. Let's scoot on over here, though. I did want to just kind of highlight too, because we did that in this class frequently, since we do have our futures disclosures. But look what else we've got. I mean, to kind of take a look at here, we do see one futures going up, and that would be the 10-year, the yield. Bonds are going higher, a little bit of a bounce there. But it's interesting. I mean, you're getting nat gas, which is looking kind of like a little bit of and this could be good for AI, if you think further down the supply chain. Oh, I don't know if it'll be a cup and handle, but it's kind of rounding like one. but I did some of my just own investigations because, to fuel an AI data center, um, it's coming from electricity. And in the US, about 41% of that is nat gas. Nat gas. Okay, so um, it's the highest. It's not anywhere near like coal. Coal's really quite low. Globally, it's about 48%. Of course, AI is really kind of being a big component here. We'll see what happens, but I'm just seeing a little bit of some of the signs off the bottom. CL, oil, really in a sideways range. I had put in here, I've got to note this because I had put in here a while back, a little bit of a, you guys might have seen the tweet I sent out, but this was the triangle that was forming and we did break below it. If you measure this triangle down this distance here, sorry, it's a little sloppy, but you can kind of get a general idea. It takes us all the way back down to like these prior highs. If that were to work its way down, we don't know. All else equal, lower energy prices are a positive. This is showing some signs of improvement in terms of like from the consumer side in terms of oil, but it is weird to see everything down. Well, everything except there you go, bonds. But oftentimes it's been rotational, right? You'd see like crude up or nat gas up and the market's down or vice versa, but not today. Everything is down on this Friday. But, well, I'll tell you what's not down. The VIX is not going to be down. And that right there, we'll go full screen. That's your spike on the VIX. We're back to 20, and that's a big bar. Now, keep in mind when you do see these big bars and these big ranges, um, oftentimes, not every time, it won't necessarily follow through with strength the next bar. Just go back and look. If they're really big bars like this, or even a big range, like that gap right there, you came down. This was a sort of a similar range. You bounce back. Just go back and just take a look at some of these. Even it might rest a little bit. Now, these were unusual spikes over here for sure, but over here, look at that spike. And this one here too. Well, they came back down. So just watch it. I will say that is a powerful spike, and we have had a big run within, technology. But okay, well, with that, I did want to take a look at some of our, let's see, our 6 month grid, just showing the charts first as we dive on into some of the sector strength, uh, as you can see over here. Okay, so just really quickly, you can see some of the charts are, kind of showing signs of strength. Collectively, what's really going on behind the scenes might not be as strong on a comparative basis to the market. They still might be showing strength. They're just not moving up nearly as much. Let's go into the rotation grid. And by the way, um, oh yeah, let's just go ahead and share this because many of you are new and you haven't seen it. Quick note on ThinkScripts. ThinkScripts aren't guaranteed for timeliness or accuracy. I will have each of these posted for you at the end, at the bottom of our, for those of you watching it on the recorded session under the description section. So we're just called this sector rotation. That's not sector rotation. I'm sorry. This is just the sector grid. Sector rotation next. Quick note, because we do like to review those. We do have new people coming in each week, so I just want to keep resharing that for you. Sector rotation. So this is like specifically seeing how these sectors are performing relative to the market. You can see a lot of recent spikes on the week. So weekly, healthcare, staples, industrials, quite strong. Technology down, but over the past several months, that's where we've really seen the strength relative. These charts are relative to the S&P 500. Okay. I'll go ahead and just share this one now too. I want to pick up still though on the AI theme because that's where a lot of institutions are really stating the trend. If it does, whenever in technology it could resume, there could be a lot of strength there. And there are a number of different sectors that are tied to AI, kind of like I mentioned with nat gas, um, utilities, specifically industrials, in terms of the AI build-up that I want to get into with you guys too. Okay, so here we go. This is the sector grid. I also want to take a look though at healthcare because healthcare is like a rotational one, and that's probably got the biggest bounce as of late, comparatively speaking. So a lot to do. Let's just hit this though. Okay, so sector rotation. Rotation grid. And that's our 6 month grid right there. But just so you have it, there it is. All right. By the way, there is a survey in the link, folks. If you get a chance to fill that out, just let us know how we're doing. Brent and I in this discussion here. It's just two questions, and there's topic requests in there as well. Be sure to like today's presentation if you do find value in it as well. Okay, so moving on over here, I wanted to talk about a couple of key areas to look at. Really diving into technology because that's where a lot of the the trend strength is at. Also tied in to the markets, despite the bigger sell-off looking towards the end of the year. Let's just do this right now. Okay, so a couple of key areas are going to be specifically in that group. In fact, if we were to come over here and scan, this is what a lot of mention is on right now. So I'm going to go over here into industrials and in information technology, but specifically, it's going to be in the semiconductors and equipment and electronic equipment as well. But if I select all these and scan, these are all within that group. Now, one of the key ones that is being mentioned that hasn't gone up as much, but still fitting into that group, NVIDIA. Okay. Um, Let me just show you over here. So that is, now you see this, we looked at the market, then we looked at the sector. Now we're in the industry, and now we're at the company. So NVIDIA is also down. Do we have any signs of it coming back yet? No. In fact, these groups are really selling off the hardest today, clearly. If you come over here and look, that is the 200 level right there. A big round number. You can see that we've came close to kind of holding that range a few times, but clearly here. Will we hold at that point? Well, that remains to be seen. I mean, but it's one, if we do consolidate and start to move, uh, there's been a lot of growth and a lot of expected growth towards the end of the year, NVIDIA. Okay. It's still kind of in a consolidation. We'll see what happens here. Um, some others, we already looked at AVGO. Here is Vertiv. So Vertiv, this is kind of like a physical AI data center play. So this is like the AI data centers themselves. So this is kind of really kind of the sort of a what some would say are the pure play in AI infrastructure. They're laying out the infrastructure here. You can see the strength of the trend. We have to put today in context because I know it's a big downward day, but these ones are selling off the most. We'll look at some of the others in a second, but be looking at maybe some of these areas here. Keep in mind, I mentioned these guys are tied into the physical AI data center build outs. Okay, so this is kind of the um, that whole management there of that creation. However you feel about it, I mean, these guys are kind of leading that pack, and so watching these areas. Remember, towards the remainder of the year, there's a lot left, a lot of time left in the remainder of the year. So we're just kind of getting a sense. Could this be like, flagging? This is like kind of a bigger move. Is this your flag coming down? And do we see that resumption like we might get generally with the S&P 500 right over here, under seasonal behavior? Yeah. Do we see this is that long-term trend? I'll just quickly pull this over here. But just kind of putting it in context of what might be happening behind the scenes. This is funny. We do tend to get a dip. We talked about this last week, but 5 years, 10 years, 20, I've seen this in 50 years. See that little dip over there? They refer to that as the summer doldrums. Uh, Maybe we're starting a little early. It hasn't lined up perfectly here, but generally speaking, that's your trajectory. Doesn't have to be this way, but it can be, especially in an up year. Um, but I refer to that as the summer rally, which is kind of mid to late June before we get going. But this oftentimes, folks, is a couple weeks. We might have, potentially another week there if it's an early cycle, but it could go all the way, I mean, it could do whatever it wants, but just park that in the back of your mind. I'm going to reset everything over here back to our regular chart, and there you go. That's a good quick way to reset everything to get back to exactly where we were here. All right, folks, AI infrastructure, NVIDIA, Broadcom, Vertiv. Broadcom, as we mentioned, not great. But another area tied to this are the industrials that are tied to kind of the electrification of AI. I spent some time this week just going through and kind of finding out in industrials. So we looked at industrials. Industrials, I mean, here's the Dow. It's kind of a little bit of a lagger, and these are a lot of industrial stocks in here. But oh, that was one of our other paper trades or something. Okay. Um, but as you see over here, uh, that's the industrials, Dow Jones Industrials. There's your spike up, possible consolidation here. And there's a big 50,000 number there on the Dow. But industrial companies, they're tied to the electrification of building that out. So not just the creation, the coding, etc., like Vertiv does, but I'm talking about the actual physical power management, electrical equipment, um, data center sort of electrification is what they call it. That's the area. And it's not, and it's down today as well. But you can see over here, it's been very, very strong and maybe in a consolidation range. This is ETN, PWR. These guys do sort of the grid construction and transmission for AI. This has actually been holding up okay over here. Uh, it's a down day again. But there is a gap in here. And anytime you get a gap, this can present some support, but really holding pretty well uh, in that gap as it stands right now. But if, let's say we start to break out of this range, we get a higher high, a higher low, well, we could start to resume potentially this longer term trend breakout to the upside. This is what some of these sort of stronger, you can say kind of bubbles look like. They just go up, consolidate, kind of like this right here. This was sort of a longer term one, but notice over here, you jump up and you just kind of go down. Well, here we are again, and we're just kind of doing the same thing. So just to let you know, they are tied into it. One more, I want to do basically three in each area. And then I've got one more AI before we get into some healthcare too. But here is GEV. So this is part of, that branch off from GE. In fact, let's go into it right now. It's the energy company, but this is like the power equipment, gas turbines. They're tied into grid technology and electrification, and they're being used for these AI center data build outs as well. But here you go. Something similar. It's kind of been consolidating for a little bit after a big run, but these are big moves. So some of these can be going. I take it these are probably some of the exit orders being filled in the paper money on today's trade. But here you go. So there's your pullback right there. There's 900. Just like we were looking at these other ones, some of them are coming back down towards these big levels. We can watch it. There's still a little bit of room to go. But if we start to see it, we have to be watching these. I mean, I want to be watching them just to see what does happen in this class going forward so we can look at that towards the end of the year. If we start to get a rally, I mean, just as an example, after a big consolidation, this here can be big, and it can be if the pattern's long enough, it can extend to the end of the year as well. It's that long. I mean, it caught the first end of the year. Could it go to the next end of the year? That's the question. All right. Now we're going further on down the supply chain into the actual. So we looked at AI, those on the front end of AI. Then we looked at those that are building the AI infrastructure out, electrification of the AI, even some of the coding as it relates there. But then also down into the power and utilities itself. So getting into that, we've got like CEG, Constellation Energy. This one's been low. And a lot of these have really been lagging. And my expectation is these could be maybe some of the laggards in the group. If you look at the weekly, though, what does that trend look like? They might still participate, and they are nearing prior longer term bottoms themselves. But there you have it. We'll see what happens within this group. But they are clearly tied into it. VST is another one. Could it be a longer term bottom? If it is, maybe the cycle just later. And this is one that's not on the bottoms, but more on the top side, the top end. We'd looked at this previously as initially a flag pattern. It did not unfold. It went down with other areas, but I still wanted to hit like the very, very back end. If you look over here with me, look at this. See that right there? Kind of near some areas. So these could be interesting if they start to move a little bit. The one thing I wanted to say here, keep in mind that dividends are not guaranteed to continue into the future, but these are some of the areas where you might find dividend yields as well, because they are kind of in that area of traditional yields. I mean, you're talking about utilities. That's a traditional yielder, really. And like, where are we here? 62 cents. I mean, it's not going to be huge. It's going to be what, three, 2 to 3-ish? Yeah, close to three at that number. So about 2.9, about real close to 3%. But those dividend yields have increased as prices have gone down. Kind of maybe more of a longer term way to play this. The thing I wanted to mention though is we still want to look at, I mean, by the way, an example way that some traders might look to do this. It's not like anything guaranteed, but you can look at the longer term end that might be a slow mover, still has like some generation in terms of growth to it and also income. So pure plays on down to the electrification, tied into AI, the build out, finally down into, okay, where are these guys? Where are those that are electrifying it getting their fuel from? Well, we just hit those. So I wanted to hit that because I think it's interesting to follow these into the end of the year if we still see that build out some strength in AI going forward. Okay. So got it, Riceberg. Yeah. Hey, on days like this, you might hear a few of those little notifications, right? Oh, good to know, Sam. So NE is big on solar, particularly in Florida. A lot of sun in Florida. I know Arizona's got quite a bit of that, just living, kind of adjoined to that state out here. As well. So those are some to kind of consider as we look at that. Now, there are some others as well that I just wanted to quickly highlight here for you that I'd noted here. Just a quick little note that I'd had, and I'm going to zoom into these and just take a look. So some of the others that have pulled back as we go into some of the healthcare, these are areas that, I looked at this morning to this is kind of a longer term sort of a pullback with Bristol Myers. What is the yield on Bristol? 4.4. So this is it may in fact be a dividend aristocrat. I don't know for certain, but that'd be 25 years of raising. I could find out. You guys want to see? We can just go over here. We'll flatten this out. Just go into the watch list, and I wanted to go over here and just go into the public, and it's going to be at the top. So 25 plus year dividend. I don't know if these are specifically aristocrats. Aristocrats have to be in the S&P 500. You'll see, look at this, like Abbott, AbbVie. These are both pharmaceuticals. Um, Others, but BMY, no, I'm not seeing BMY there. Forget it. It's not in that group. We also have a 50-year dividend increaser as well, too, which is interesting as we sort of plan out, I said, towards the second half of the year. Uh, that seems to be a higher yield. It kind of bounced off some support here as well. You know what? I'm always wondering because you see this happen so often, but if we're throwing a fib on this guy as well. Oh, look at that. Yeah. So right in that 38.2 range, you see that? The Fibonacci. Oh, look at that right there. Touch, touch. Bounce again. Will it hold? That's the question. Will it hold? But if you're looking for maybe a change in trend over here, well, that could be of interest to some traders. All right, that's one. I wanted to take a look at another area there too. Within the healthcare, there's just a lot of them that I wanted to bring up with you guys today. Let's take a look at the healthcare, some of those that have been noted for combinations of growth and value. Lilly. Now, Lilly did just barely break. This is more of a momentum. in the healthcare area did just break above some highs. You can kind of get a sense where something like this could see some strength towards perhaps the end of the year. Here's your rally on up. Consolidation. Could we see a further consolidation here after you're taking out some highs? Now, it's an expensive stock, and there could be other sorts of instruments that could be used on something like this. But I'm just going to, this one might be perhaps more timely to some traders, investors, because you just broke above this level, showing some strength. But maybe they would, you know, put in a small number of shares or just different instruments that they could be potentially looking at here. Another one in healthcare, ISRG. This one has really been on the low end, although many were anticipating it kind of, oh, there's your weekly chart right there. I don't know. Will that bounce? Will that show some strength to the remainder of the year? That's an interesting question. Um, got just one more in here. This is more strength to UNH, and you can see it actually over here on a weekly. We did just get into the range where we made a higher high above here and a higher low above here. So the trend, we got a trend notification. It was right there on our weekly. Now, zooming into this right here, do you see us breaking above this range and maybe forming a flag type pattern over here? Do you see it? We're just starting to get moving out of that. I know it's at 400 and we're kind of pausing in here, but sometimes there could be some trades that traders could look at over here into this range. I mean, one of these, I mean, if we just put on a sample trade here just to look at it, um, it's not going to be perfect timing. You know, obviously it's not bouncing off the bottom and we've run up a little bit. We're right at resistance, but let's just say some traders are looking at this and they're expecting this to kind of consolidate a little bit or to run up higher um, in healthcare. So let's just do very small. I'm just going to do 25 shares on this. It is a $400 stock. I'm going to do an OCO bracket order on this. We'll do a good tail cancel, and we'll shoot this up a little bit higher here, maybe like 440. I'll show you where that flag pattern might unfold to, but we're not going to really risk a lot on this one in terms of a potential stop order. Remember, stops aren't guaranteed to fill at that price, but they do compete with other existing market orders once they are triggered. So let's go ahead and just put this into 25. We'll link it together, and let's take a look at see what this looks like over here on our confirmation dialog box. You can take a look at that. It is still quite expensive, even for 25 shares. That's a $5,000 order. There are other instruments out there too, though, that could be utilized. Let's click. I'll just show you what that looks like. And so a trader that doesn't want to risk too much could just, let's zoom in on this guy and we'll just do something like this. No, I got to pull it down. Okay. So they might say, you know what, put it below the prior day's low in terms of a potential stop, but our target could be substantially higher. In fact, if we wanted to use just a full retracement of this daily flag, that's kind of the target range right there from the low to the high. Let's duplicate that and pull it over right there. I'm going to raise our target up to this point. Now, again, this is just an example trade, and I would say the timing's not perfect. I mean, some would say it's a good trade if you, in fact, break above this high right here and start to run. Does that make sense? If you can break above, I mean, some would say they like it if it takes out the prior highs, especially if we're right at resistance. So we're not there yet. But if it were to break up, come down, and then hold 400, we put the example trade on to just show it in class. But if it were to hold that, well, then perhaps we could see some strength here. All right. Just looking at the stock only, that is what we're seeing on this. But you know, with this particular company, um, you know, there's a lot in terms of sort of medical cost trends that have been involved, but they are just reading into it. There's actually a little bit of an AI element here. They're finding ways using AI to try to make that more efficient so that they can pass on some cost cutting is what the company's saying anyway. So anyways, I wanted to hit this one as we take a look at that too. All right. By the way, you know what else pulled back a little bit? Sometimes traders want to see the pullbacks too. You know, the big runs up, the big runs. You know, in other words, Amazon like this, one of the Mag 7s, it didn't run up as much as you can see, right? It didn't run up as much, but what happened is it maybe flagged a flagged a little, about 240-ish right there. So let's just see what does happen over here. You know, that's one that some traders could look at to, yeah, let's see. Visa is one that has sold off quite a bit, but as of recently actually had a pretty good earnings announcement. It's kind of consolidating here. The question is are we seeing something like this unfold? Shoulder, head, shoulder. And then if we start to kind of break out here, could we then begin to resume towards the latter half of the year? What do you guys think? Did we give some ideas in here? Some things to look at towards the end of the year? Um, Hopefully that was informative for you. Just a quick note here before we wrap it up. You know, here's the ES coming down pretty sharply. You know what's been holding up though? Even though it's been flat, advanced decline line on the NYSE, not too bad. Not too bad, all else equal. And the equal weight still hitting. We'll see if the equal weights, in other words, some of those other areas outside of technology begin to hold up. This is not too surprising. We did get another Hindenburg Omen spike right there. It was a fairly big spike, as you guys could see. I mean, well, it's a fairly big down bar here. This doesn't, so in other words, a number of 52-week new lows and highs occurred this week. We know the highs, a lot of those came in the technology group, but then also there were a number of lows. If you get a combination of those two, you can see a fracturing in the market. But you know, it really just sort of depends, but it can be the beginning too of a little bit of a downward move. In fact, you saw one over here, right, that started. This one, no, it rallied higher, but you will see others in here where you get that Hindenburg Omen spike and you'll see the follow through. But we're going to be watching this closely in terms of our daily chart going forward here. Okay, we looked at the NASDAQ. Uh, we looked at seasonality. We looked at the intraday S&P, so we've actually already looked at many of these things indirectly. So, folks, I hope this is of interest to you. Keep an eye on some of these areas, okay? And be watching AI and how would they break down into different categories towards the end of the year as well. And by the way, just finally, always be mindful of that sector rotation grid, just the sector charts themselves. We might start to see some moves in this group if technology dips for a little bit. Um, these areas, and where are Staples? Oh, Staples right here. Industrials was the other one right up top here. So we kind of focused in on some of these charts as well. That's almost like a flag pattern. This one's sort of a rounded, you can kind of see the cup and handle here with healthcare. Looked at a few of those. We didn't look at too much at consumer staples. That's kind of a laggard in the group. But hopefully I gave you some things to look at. That was the idea here as we look into the end of the year on some of these pullbacks that might be of interest in those three key categories within AI. And then, of course, the bonus section within healthcare as well, folks. There is that link, that survey link in the chat. If you guys get a chance to fill that out, be sure to follow Brennan and I on X, and we'd love to have you join us in our Trader Talks channel. If you're not already there, you can do so right here. Actually, throw that in the chat box as well, so you got that too. But I think many of you are. You guys have a fantastic weekend. I will look forward to future discussions with you. And yeah, we'll keep an eye on these continuing on. All right. Thank you so much, Brent, for your help. You guys take care. See you next time.